Oh, 20 seconds?
Oh, okay. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't quite sure whether it was Rochelle or who was assisting us today.
It's live now.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Commissioner Sexton, and I welcome you to the monthly meeting of the Energy and Environmental Sustainability Commission for the City of Milpitas. And today is April the 21st. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can join me, I'll go ahead and stand up and hopefully not upset anything while I'm standing up. But let's say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to have the roll call for attendance, and I'd like to go ahead and say that a short welcome to Commissioner Admana, who is joining us for the first time. He's an alternate commissioner, so for this meeting, he will be seated and be able to vote. So could we go ahead and have the attendance roll call, please?
Yes, give me 1 second. Okay, Commissioner Badesha. I don't think he's on yet. Vice Chair Kong.
Here.
Great. Commissioner Lingle. I think just joined. Commissioner Lingle. We can't hear you. And you don't look to be muted. Okay, I'll note he's here and he will work on his audio.
Okay.
Commissioner Martinez. I don't believe I see her yet. Commissioner Salian.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Sexton.
Here.
Commissioner Shreve. Don't think is here. Alternate Commissioner Admana.
Present.
Thank you. And Councilmember Chua is present.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Okay, well, great. I think we have a quorum, so we can begin our meeting. The first item is to seat alternate Commissioner Admana, so that since we have 2 or 3 other commissioners that aren't able to join us today. All right. I'd like to move on to item number 5, the approval of the agenda for tonight. So you've all received the agenda that was sent out last Friday. All those, well, sorry, we're doing a roll call vote for this. So please give your response during the roll call vote.
Actually, Chair Sexton, I do need a motion and a second first.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Yes.
It's been a while.
It's been two months. So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
I make the motion to approve the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Salian. I hear a second. So please give your vote during the roll call.
Great. Vice Chair Kong.
Aye.
Perfect. Commissioner Lingle. I heard him. I saw him mouth aye. Uh-oh. Let's see. Commissioner Salian.
Aye.
Great. Chair Sexton.
Aye.
And alternate Commissioner Admana.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Lingle, you may want to try to call in with the phone number if we still can't hear you, hear you.
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
still can't hear
we
you.
can't hear you. So yes, you can do your video by your computer, but if you do your audio by the phone, then the two together should cover you.
Make you whole.
Okay.
you.
Thank you. So let's move on to the approval of the last meeting minutes. So this would be for the meeting of February 17th. You received the draft meeting minutes. So could I hear a motion to approve these meeting minutes? Well, I'll go ahead and move to approve the meeting minutes of the February 17th meeting. Do I hear a second to this motion?
I will second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Kong. And if everyone, when you respond to the roll call, give your response to Elaine, please.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Lingle, okay, thumbs up from Commissioner Lingle. Commissioner Salian,
Aye.
Chair Sexton,
Aye.
and alternate Commissioner Edmana.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
All righty. The next order of business is the public forum. So at this time, anyone, do we have anyone online that may want to make a public statement?
We do not have any hands raised as of now, but I will alert you after the business item if we do.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. All right, with no public comments to entertain, let's go ahead and move on to item number 8, the announcements. So I'd like to say a very hearty welcome to alternate Commissioner Edmana to be joining this commission for the first time. So
Right,
that's
thank you.
great. And would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself to the group?
Okay. So yeah, my name is Richard Admana. You can call me either Rich or Richard. I have one kid, a 23-year-old daughter, working full-time for Western Digital Corporation, located in Great Oaks. It's a former IBM. We manufacture hard drive disks and solid state drives that you put inside your computer. I'm originally from the Philippines and arrived here in the early 90s, 1991, and spent most of my residency here in Milpitas for about 20 years. And I've seen everything. I've seen the developments, the Great Mall, which is a former Ford Motor Plant, Seafood City. It was like Home Depot before. We used to have Mervin's, now a 24-hour fitness gym. So yeah, during my free time, I like going to go for a jog or walk around the neighborhood. So if you guys want to join, just let me know. So again, yeah, it's nice to meet you here, and looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving us a little bit about your background. And I'm glad that you've been living in Milpitas for so long and see it change also. Many of us, as I've been in Milpitas for over 25 years now. So it's a great city and I'm very glad to be here. So I'd like to make one other announcement regarding our commission, and that is Commissioner Lingle, who is still working hard to try to get his phone to join the meeting, has been approved by the City Council from alternate commissioner to full commissioner. So I'm glad that Commissioner Lingle, that you've replaced Commissioner Liu, who unfortunately will not be part of our commission anymore. He had some other responsibilities to take up his time, so he wasn't able to continue with his commission. But we will certainly miss Commissioner Liu's contribution to this commission, and hopefully in some future time he may be have enough time to join us again. So that would be great. Do we have any other announcements at this time?
One second, Chair Sexton. Commissioner Lingle, can you give me a thumbs up if the phone number 408-655, is that you? Okay.
Okay, I think
I think we
You're
moved
good.
him over. Can you speak now, Commissioner Lingle?
Commissioner Lingle, you might have to unmute yourself. I think what's the button sequence to unmute a phone? It's something like *5 or something like that.
There.
There you go. Yes,
Can hear
teamwork.
you.
Boy, what a
All
pain.
right, wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Lingle, I'm so glad now that we can both see and hear you.
Right. Yep.
Great. Chair Sexton, we're still on announcements. I want to go ahead and take a moment to introduce our Deputy City Manager, Walter Rossman, who has joined us.
Okay.
Yeah, Walter, do you want to say hello?
Thank you, Elaine. Good afternoon. Walter Rossman, Deputy City Manager, Chair Sexton, and Commissioners. I'll be joining you throughout this next few months or so. I just recently fully assumed my responsibilities in the manager's office. I was the finance director for the last 2 years for the city, and I'm giving up my dual role and looking forward to working with the commission on a very important topic such as the one today.
Thank you very much, Walter. That I'm so glad that you'll be joining us at our monthly meetings for the next few months. So that's great. Welcome. Are you joining the city of Milpitas sort of fairly recently?
I joined the city about 2 years ago.
Okay,
June 2019, and I worked for other cities in the Bay Area before. And again, looking forward to working with Tony and Elaine and supporting the commission.
great. Thanks very much for being with us.
I don't have any other announcements at this time.
Okay, other commissioners or council member Chua, do you have any announcements to share with the group? Okay, I don't
Hi,
hear
Chair.
any.
I'll do it at the liaisons report. Is that where?
The liaison report is it later in? Yeah, it's that's
Yes.
under item number 10.
Right,
We're still under announcements.
right. No announcement for me. I'll report on item 10.
Okay,
you.
wonderful. Sounds good. Okay, then let's move on to item number 9, our main business for tonight. Item A is the climate action plan update. So let's move into that.
Great. Well, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commission. I'm excited to welcome our Climate Action Plan consultant team to present to you tonight. We have been busy working, they've been busy working on a lot of things behind the scenes, including completing greenhouse gas emissions inventories for the city of Milpitas as a community, as well as specific to our municipal operations, as well, and doing a forecast of greenhouse gas emissions looking long-term through 2045. So they're here tonight to kind of walk you through their findings, where they see the city headed in terms of emissions based on existing past legislation and our existing climate action plan actions, and then taking a bulk of the time to really kind of talk through and get your feedback on potential bold actions and reduction measures to include in the climate action plan update. So this is your chance to share your feedback on some measures that we know are being taken elsewhere in the state and in the country, and to just get your feedback on whether or not those are feasible, suitable for Milpitas, and what we can do to prepare the community for that, as well as give you guys an opportunity to share some thoughts on other things we might be wanting to include in the climate action plan update. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hannah Cornfield, who is the project manager with Ascent Environmental. With her tonight is Honey Walters and Sam Rudderman. So they will lead us through the presentation.
Great, thanks, Elaine. And good evening, everyone. Really excited to be back presenting a lot of updates since we last came to the commission a few months ago. So we'll just dive right in. Next slide, please. So here's just a brief agenda of what we'll cover. So just some quick updates on where the Climate Action Plan Update project is. The statuses of the greenhouse gas inventories and forecasts, which are now complete. And then framing this conversation about carbon neutrality in Milpitas and what actions might help the city get there. So looking forward to hopefully an engaging discussion with you all about what's feasible and realistic for Milpitas. And then at the end, just gonna announce our upcoming workshop, which hopefully if you got the Sustainable Milpitas newsletter, you saw the save the date in there, but again, we'll provide some details and we hope to see you at the workshop. Next slide, please. Great. So for the project so far, we've gotten a lot done, as I said, since we've last seen you all. So those include completing the greenhouse gas emissions inventories. The city had previously had a 2005 greenhouse gas emissions baseline conducted. So we updated that to current methodologies, and we'll dive into the specifics about what that looks like in terms of where the city is and as of 2019. We've also been working on a consumption-based inventory, which is a little bit different than the traditional production-based inventory. We've also conducted emissions forecasts through the year 2045 to align with the carbon neutrality target, conducted a vulnerability assessment looking at climate change impacts on the city, and launched the online dashboard. We're currently working on developing the strategies that will make up the bulk of the plan. So both the climate adaptation strategies and the greenhouse gas reduction strategies. We'll be back to present to the commission on the climate adaptation strategies, I believe next month, but today we'll focus just on the greenhouse gas reduction because this plan obviously covers a lot and it's hard to present everything in one presentation. So we'll do it in chunks here. And then we're also developing consumption-based strategies to go along with the consumption-based inventory. And again, we'll be seeking your feedback on that. And we're working on our upcoming community workshop. We'll have 2 workshops. One will be on May 6th coming right up. And then after all of that, we'll work on some pilot project evaluation, which again, we'll be presenting to the commission about what priorities should we focus on first and what projects should we evaluate. And then preparing the draft climate action plan document and the associated CEQA documentation that goes along with that for you all to consider and for the city council ultimately to hopefully adopt. So with that, we can go to the next slide, please. So here's just a quick timeline of our project. We're about halfway through the process at this point. We've been meeting with a executive steering committee made up of city department leaders on about a monthly basis. And as I just said, we're in process with a lot of these different items right now. So next slide, please. Great. So for the greenhouse gas inventory, we've conducted both a community-wide inventory as well as a municipal operations inventory. And for the community-wide inventory, we looked at 2005, 2015, and 2019, just to kind of see where the city is progressing in the last decade and a half or so. So this is kind of just a high-level overview of what the overall trends are. So generally between 2005 and 2019, there was about a 19% decrease in emissions, which is primarily due to, as you can see, the on-road transportation. That gray bar got a little bit smaller over time due to primarily improvements in vehicle efficiency from state and federal regulations. And then the yellow and the orange bars also got a little bit smaller, the residential and non-residential building energy, which was reduced due to reductions in the carbon intensity of the electric grid and the city joining the Silicon Valley Clean Energy as a CCA in 2018. So those are just some high level overviews. And then if we go to the next slide, this just demonstrates the breakdown and kind of the impact of Silicon Valley Clean Energy primarily on what are the big sectors of emissions in the city. You can see on-road transportation increases in terms of its piece of the pie, but again, overall emissions did decrease in spite of the fact that population and employment both grew during that time in the city. And so we can dive into a few more of the trends within these specific sectors in the next slides here. So for electricity and natural gas, the total emissions between 2005 and 2019 decreased significantly. But the electricity sector obviously makes up the bulk of those reductions. And again, that's due to the city joining Silicon Valley Clean Energy and the electricity grid being regulated to become cleaner.
Excuse me, Hannah.
Yes.
Are you taking questions as we go along?
Yes, we can do questions or we can stop for questions, but
Okay.
go right ahead.
On this particular chart, it could be my eyes, but it looks like the blue section, the electricity definitely decreased a lot,
Yes.
but the orange section for natural gas emissions seems to be a bit larger in 2019 than 2005.
That's correct. And that's because building overall increased, the amount of building that was occurring in Milpitas because of the increase in population and employment. There are just more buildings and they are using natural gas. Although there are building codes and things like that to improve energy efficiency, the rate of growth outpaced those regulations. And so we did see an increase in natural gas. And when we get into kind of where the city's headed in the future, this is a really important piece that I want to come back to is how do we get rid of that big orange block there? Because you know, the way current regulations are set up is that this is really a local issue. So,
Okay.
but yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.
And just to be clear, this is the whole city. This is not just government buildings. This is just residents, everything, right?
Correct. So this is the community-wide inventory. We also have a municipal operations, but this covers all residential and non-residential buildings in the city limits that are not public facilities.
Okay. And was this inventory developed on a consumption-based inventory?
So this is a production-based inventory,
Production.
which follows the traditional methodologies for local climate action planning that's recommended. We also did do a consumption-based inventory, which we're still finalizing, and we'll present that as well to the commission in the near future.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So I take it then on the electric, you know, joining SVCE and can you elaborate a little bit more? Did everybody join? Does this reflect SVC's I don't know, electricity emissions, their estimates then?
So SVCE has very minimal emissions from their electricity. So this reflects, gosh, I believe for Milpitas, we're at about a 97% participation rate. So there is, you know, 3% of residents who are still with PG&E and getting PG&E electricity. So as well as some businesses as too. So this represents both those, you know, the minimal emissions from SVCE as well as the emissions from folks who are still with PG&E.
Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. Okay, well, yeah, feel free to just jump in if you have questions along the way on some of these charts, and we can go to the next slide for now. So this is just another breakdown of the electricity and natural gas. So it's the same trends. It's worth noting that while electricity decreases significantly between 2005 and 2019, the electricity consumption actually increased about 26%. So just want to throw that out there to just show the importance of the decarbonized grid, because again, it didn't result in increased emissions. In fact, emissions significantly decreased, even though consumption increased quite a bit in this time. Next slide, please. So the biggest piece of the pie is on-road transportation for the city, which is not uncommon from most jurisdictions in California today. This chart shows the vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, that generally rose at a pretty steep pace between 2005 and 2019, and then the emissions associated with that VMT, which rose at a slightly to a lesser degree, and that's because of the state and federal vehicle emission standards. Next slide, please.
Well, just a minute. Let's see. Okay, so does this summarize Milpitas residents on-road transportation, or all of those who drive through Milpitas?
So this is a good question, because VMT is discussed from so many different angles, and it depends on the lens that you're looking at. So for the climate action plan, the methodology that we use is in line with Senate Bill 375, so the Sustainable Community Strategy. So all trips that begin and end in the city are counted. Trips that just pass through the city and do not originate or end in the city are not counted. And trips that begin outside the city, end inside the city, or begin inside the city and end outside the city, we take 50% of the credit for those. So if all jurisdictions were to do that, then everyone would be accounting for all of the VMT that's occurring in the area. So that is the way that we've done this VMT. So if you've also been hearing about the SB 743 VMT, that took a slightly different methodology because that legislation recommends a different method. So it's not always comparing apples to apples, unfortunately, which makes it a little bit challenging. But for these purposes, this is the approach that we did, which is consistent with recommended protocols.
I find it interesting that from 2005 to 2019, that the vehicle miles traveled per capita actually has decreased, because
Right.
certainly with the communities out in the Central Valley, the homes over there, and people traveling in to work in the Bay Area, I would have thought that the vehicle miles traveled would have gone up.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And we'll get into the forecasts, which looks a little bit different than this picture. But you're absolutely correct. And that could, be associated with a lot of different things, improved public transit and then all the development in Milpitas with people maybe living a little bit closer to where they work. So all of those things were taken into consideration. And the VMT estimates that we received are from MTC. So it's the same methodology that's being used by all of the jurisdictions in the Bay Area. Great. Well, I think we can keep moving. The last item that we wanted to highlight in the community-wide inventory is the solid waste emissions, which, as you can see, decreased between 2005 and 2019. Again, despite an increase in population and employment. So recycling, different waste diversion programs, really showing a quantitative benefit to the city here, and composting, curb-wide composting collection was added to the city in the amount of time between these 2 years. So the composting is obviously not reflected in 2005.
Hannah, is the composting done in Milpitas or offsite, and we're just claiming part of that greenhouse gas emissions because some of the materials originated in Milpitas?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't believe that it's being composted in the city's limits, and Elena's shaking her head. So no, it is being transported, but it is, that waste is not being provided to landfill. So the city is getting credit for not sending that amount of waste to landfills.
Okay.
Yeah, Lynn, did you want to add anything there?
No, I think just to clarify, this is based on tonnages that are collected from our residents and businesses in Milpitas. It's all the waste that's generated. And so the emissions are associated with waste that is what we call designated for landfill. Doesn't have to be, it's not landfilled in Milpitas, it's landfilled somewhere, as well as compost. It's composted. It's
Okay.
material put out for compost by Milpitas residents or businesses.
Okay, so it's both composting and the material that goes to be made into animal feed?
I believe right now this is just compost. We're still trying to, because the animal feed process is so new, there aren't emissions factors associated with that process yet.
Okay.
Where we see the reduction is it's actually not landfilled, so there isn't the emissions from the tonnage as a landfill. It's just not there.
Okay, so this is the green cart yard waste recycling that's shown here.
Compost,
okay.
yes.
Not the food
yes.
waste.
Not the food waste.
Okay,
correct.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Hannah, I have a question.
Sure.
So for this slide and even the previous one about vehicle miles travel, do you guys plan to have a breakdown between businesses versus residential? That way, in the future for policy making, it can be more targeted towards which sector? Is it the residential or the commercial that really needs to buck up and help with the reducing greenhouse gas?
Yeah, great question. The VMT data is provided to us by MTC for residential and commercial. And so those actually have different emissions factors because we assume that some of the commercial vehicles are a little bit more heavy duty, medium duty vehicles, and passenger vehicles cover most of the residential VMT. So all of that data we have, it will be made publicly available. So yeah, if you need to access that, please feel free to reach out to Elaine. I'm sure she can get you a copy of it, but it will all be appended to the climate action plan when it's released.
And the same applies for solid waste generation?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of how the solid waste breakdown is. I believe it is, okay, I think, Sam, do you want to jump in if you have the answer to that? You're a little more familiar with the data.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, the answer right now, in short, is that no, we don't have that breakdown. We have at least what we had to start for the inventory was the tonnages from the waste hauler and also CalRecycle data, but it's not broken down by residential or commercial. I'm wondering if it's possible that the waste hauler might have a little bit more granular data, but as of now, no, it's just the entire community-wide generated solid waste.
We can get that from the hauler. What we won't be able to do, because this landfill number includes anything that was landfilled anywhere in California where somebody states it came from Milpitas. So there's a significant amount of waste that isn't handled by our hauler that is reported as coming from Milpitas. But we can look at the data we do have, and we can get a proportion. So that's helpful too.
One more question on this slide, though. Just going off of Commissioner Sexton's question. So we have let's see, I guess it's 4 bins. In the black bin we have the landfill and the composting, and then the green bin for the green the leaves and grass and stuff, and then recycling. So I just heard that the dark green is actually the green bin. Is there does that mean that the landfill or the light green, bar contains both the landfill and the composting?
No,
Bin?
the light green bar contains just what was sent to landfill, not the
Oh.
food scraps that were sent to be processed for animal feed.
Oh, I see. That's
Because-
that's what
yeah.
you guys are doing. Yeah. Okay. So those, okay. But those do not show up. The animal feed, that composting is not on this chart at all.
Not at this
Got
point, no.
Yes.
Okay.
And Commissioner Lingle, it's actually not composted. It's the process is to take the food scraps and to convert that into animal feed rather than
Absolutely.
compost.
Yep. It's very cool. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great. All great questions. Okay, well, I think that is the community-wide inventory. So again, any last questions on that before we move into the municipal operations side?
Well, let's see. One last one. Going back to, I think it was like slide 4 on the transportation breakdown, slide 4 and slide 5. One more up. Not this one. No, keep going backwards. Sorry. Keep going. Let's see. This one and the one before. Yeah. So this one is interesting. So the on-road transportation looks like it. I don't know if I'm seeing things. It would be great to get numbers, percentage numbers, or the raw numbers from this, but it looks like the on-road transportation went down or stayed about the same, even though the number of cars went up a lot. Am I right there?
We actually do have at the end of this slide deck, Elaine, I'm not sure if you're in control of the slide deck, but the second to last slide, I believe, has a table of the inventories.
Okay.
Yeah, I am not in control.
Oh, you are
of the
not.
slide
Okay.
deck, but I think for time's sake, let's just keep moving on.
Sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
Great. So again, we conducted an inventory for the municipal operations. This was not addressed in the previous climate action plan. So we did not have a 2005 baseline. This was the first inventory that we were doing for the city's operations. So we again looked at 2015 and 2019. But there were some significant changes among these. Primarily, you can see the streetlights and traffic signals significantly decreased. Again, due to SVCE and clean energy coming to the city, and that again bumped up some of the other sectors, making them a little bit larger employee commute and vehicle fleet in particular, and buildings and facilities decreased for the same reason, joining SVCE. So those were kind of the overall trends there. Next slide, please. Great, and then we can jump into the forecast. And so this is the projections of what emissions would look like without any additional local action. So the black line indicates what would happen without federal or state legislation that is already adopted and required. This does not take into account legislation that's currently pending or under consideration by different state agencies or the federal government. This is only things that are for sure, legislative adjustment is what we call it. So all of the wedges together is where the city is headed. So it is a decrease, but it's not a significant decrease over time. The city, because it joined Silicon Valley Clean Energy, is not getting a great reduction in the building energy sector, which some other jurisdictions may see because of Senate Bill 100, which is requiring carbon-free electricity by 2045. So that trend line is not really there because you already got credit for it between 2015 and 2019 for the most part. So overall, we're expecting about a 5% decrease in emissions between 2019 and 2030, and about a 10.5% decrease between 2019 and 2045. The city is aiming to get to carbon neutrality by 2045. So that means that those emissions would need to go down to all the way to zero. So there is certainly work to be done, and we can discuss that more. That's why we're here today. So we just want to again kind of paint the picture of the biggest emission sectors, and that they're remaining relatively constant. And we know the city is anticipating more population and employment growth. So again, these projections take into account all of the anticipated growth in the city, and all of the legislative actions that are known to date that would affect emissions.
Hannah, could you help me understand where on the GHG emissions is back in 2005? Where is that on the scale?
So that's a good question. We don't have that on this chart. We could certainly provide a chart that includes 2005. But for this purpose, 2019 is the revised baseline that we're measuring progress from for the purposes of setting new targets for the city, particularly for 2030, for the climate action plan to be used for CEQA streamlining purposes. So for those reasons, we didn't include 2005, but we certainly could add that to the chart here.
Okay, I was just sort of wondering, you know, is that at, you know, like 200,000 MT CO2 equivalents, or, you know, how?
Yeah, let's see here. So it was about 100,000 metric tons higher in 2005 than it was in 2019.
Okay. So yes, we're way above that, and we need to bring it back down and down to zero.
Right, exactly.
And I also have a question regarding the gray portion, which is the on-road transportation.
Sure.
You said that a lot of the data is coming from MTC. I'm just trying to understand how accurate is this inventory from MTC, because, like, for example, here in Milpitas, we recently have Amazon opening a big warehouse hub, and they have added few hundreds trucks that are, you know, carrying a lot of goods every day in and out around the Bay Area. And are this going to negatively impact Milpitas because of the way that the businesses that's coming in is heavily focused on, or at least heavily using the roads with commercial vehicles?
Yeah, that's a great question. The MTC VMT forecast is based on regional transportation modeling that takes into account land use change, population change, and employment change for all of the Bay Area, but it gets down to the city level. So these forecasts have been developed over the past few years, and they don't take into account every project that's planned in a city. We know the city has a lot of specific plans coming that are probably going to reduce VMT because folks will be closer to where they work and they'll have better transit access. And so those are the types of activities where we can demonstrate local action in the on-road transportation sector in the future. In terms of Amazon, you know, again, that may have not been anticipated, although it may have been with an increase in employment and associated commercial VMT. I would be curious if Amazon, being one of the large corporations that's starting to make big climate commitments, if they're, you know, committing to zero emission vehicle fleet or something like that at their new warehouses. I'm not sure, but these are all things that are really good to think about. But that level of specificity, I don't believe is included in these forecasts.
Is there a breakdown of, in terms of a forecast, a breakdown between percentage of cars that are expected to be combustion versus electric embedded in this?
Yes. So the emissions factors for the vehicles that are making up the emissions in this forecast take into account what the expected fleet of all vehicles driving on the roads will be. And this comes from the California Air Resources Board. So they estimate a certain percentage of the fleet to be electric vehicle between plug-in hybrids and battery electric and things like that. So we use their 2021 model, so it's very new. It has the most recent assumptions for electric vehicles in there. But it may not be as progressive as perhaps the city wants to be, or the city is expecting greater EV adoption. And so that's again where the local action comes in, and what can the city do to incentivize EV adoption, install additional EV charging infrastructure, things like that.
Okay, so that is not built in then. Okay, all right.
So
let's
it's
see.
built into about, there's about I believe it's about 10% is expected by 2030 of the fleet on the road in terms of the passenger vehicles is expected to be electric. So that is baked into these forecasts, but anything beyond that is not.
So for
I see.
example, what's not baked in is the governor's executive order with the goal of banning fossil fuel-based passenger vehicles by 2030. So that's right now an executive order. It hasn't been codified, so that's not baked into this yet. That will definitely have a significant impact and change in the inventory of passenger vehicles, beyond 2030. So there is some anticipated changes that aren't baked in because they're not codified yet.
And a climate action planning is a very iterative process. This is why we revisit the inventory over time, especially in a state like California, where there are so many regulations, coming down the pipe that will affect the emissions profile of a local city. So, these are things we'll just kind of keep an eye on, and again, the city can update the forecast as needed.
It would also be great to see companies like Amazon and other delivery services adopt electric vehicles at a much faster rate than what is being required of them.
Yeah, not to be a spokesperson for Amazon, but I keep seeing their commercials. So they have a very aggressive pledge to change their delivery vehicles to all electric, and I think they are planning on 100,000 soon. So they are taking some action. So I think we can at least rest assured the Amazon vehicles will be clean.
Yeah, and I believe that Amazon, all their warehouses, they're using hydrogen fuel cells already. So I think they're implemented it nationwide. So that's a good start. So hopefully the trucks, the fleet, they start using hydrogen soon too as well.
Well, hydrogen fuel cells are not emissions free, unfortunately, at this time.
Well, I think they're taking it from there's such hydrogen, such as like green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. So green hydrogen is being produced from electrolysis. So that's purely, green energy right there. And some are being produced from using coal, I think. So that's a different
Natural
kind
gas.
of,
Yeah.
natural gas, yes.
Um,
And also, regarding the on-road transportation emission, the transportation passing through the freeways, are those included as well?
So
I'm kind of
pass-through
confused.
trips are not. If it
Okay.
does not originate or end in the city, it's not included.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Elaine, want to do a quick time check. What is our ending time?
We usually go till 7:30 ish.
Okay.
But it's really kind of going to be at the will of the commission members.
Okay.
So
Okay. Great. Just wanted to make sure we have some
but
time.
yeah, we should pick up the pace a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can just kind of whiz through these pretty quickly. These are just some more trends of the forecast. The non-residential building energy is projected to decrease over time. And that's, again, as we talked about earlier, there are fewer businesses and non-residential customers that have signed on to SVCE right now. So the resulting Senate Bill 100 carbon neutrality or carbon-free electricity takes a greater effect on the non-residential building energy side, and residential building energy is expected to remain relatively constant despite the change in population. Next slide, please. And then this is a little bit of a more detailed look at the electricity and natural gas. So this slide is really just showing that there's expected to be an increase in consumption overall, both electricity and natural gas. But again, that tan colored bar does not decrease very much over time, which is natural gas. So electricity, we know, is required by state law to get to carbon-free electricity by 2045. Natural gas will continue to emit into the future. So when we're thinking about carbon neutrality, these are some of the harder to decarbonize sectors that we would love to get some feedback, and we have some ideas on bold strategies, but we're here to hear your feedback today.
And Elaine, do you know if there are any legislation in place right now that looks at perhaps subsidizing the replacement of gas furnaces into heat pumps or things like that?
Yeah, there's oh, go ahead, Elaine.
Go ahead, go ahead, Hannah.
There's a few programs right now. It's at Senate Bill 1477, which has the build and the tech programs, which are incentivizing and subsidizing retrofits for decarbonized appliances in residences. So that's looking at things from a statewide level, and there's a lot of funding available there. PG&E is required through Senate Bill 350 to double energy efficiency savings for its service area. So and that's by 2030. So they have to have programs in place to start to retrofit. So there is funding available in different mechanisms. The Air District, I believe, is also working with PG&E and others to provide some incentives and things like that. So it's coming from a lot of different levels, but there's not a lot of kind of regulatory teeth to say we have to retrofit. It's much more voluntary at this point.
I appreciate it, because I think a lot of the obstacle to reducing gas usage is the cost of retrofit. So
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great, next slide, please. Then this shows the anticipated on-road transportation, both emissions and VMT. So in purple, VMT is anticipated to continue to increase, and that's primarily due to increased population and employment. Again, this is not taking into consideration VMT reductions from the new specific plans that are being created throughout the city that could start to bring that trend line down a little bit. And greenhouse gas emissions over time anticipated to decrease from on-road transportation as more vehicles are electrified. But those regulations right now start to kind of peter out towards 2040, which is why you start to see more of a flat line is we just haven't gotten that far in the regulations to have a good look at what that might do in the future. Next slide, please. And then this is the VMT per capita slide we saw before. There was a pretty significant decrease between 2005 and 2019. In the future, the trend line is actually pretty flat. And as you can see, there's an increase through 2030, and then it starts to, the VMT starts to kind of meet the same rate for per capita that it was before. And this is, again, without any additional local action, without planning from the city. This is the situation with just looking at legislation and just looking at MTC's Vmt forecast for Milpitas in these years.
So with COVID, we learned that we could all work from home, or not all, but some of us. and in fact, I mean, some corporations are, taking that and trying to figure out if it's possible to continue that kind of trend. Has that new model of working, been absorbed into any of this?
It's still pretty early to tell. There have been studies about that, but we don't really know the long-term impacts of this. It's really kind of 1 year's worth of data at this point. So it's something we're keeping an eye on, but again, the opportunities for folks to work from home is definitely something to consider in terms of VMT reduction strategies. And it's something that we have on the docket for later to discuss. MTC had some really bold ideas when they were working on Plan Bay Area 2050 about kind of requiring employers to have employees stay home so many days of the week, or percentage of employees, things like that. So those are all kind of big ideas that we all can discuss in a little bit.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. And then just really briefly on the municipal operations, next slide, please. So similar trend lines for municipal operations. Again, this does not account for the ESCO projects and all the energy efficiency upgrades that the city is currently working on. Those are actions that the city is taking. So we want to make sure that the city is getting credit for those on the action side of things, rather than in the forecast that accounts for state and federal legislation. So that will be reflected when the plan is a little bit more formulated. But similar trend lines, employee commute starts to decrease a little bit with increased electric vehicle adoption. Not a lot of growth anticipated in terms of municipal operations. So the trend lines are slightly, ticking down, but not to a significant degree. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Hannah, I think we can go through these a little bit faster.
Okay, yeah, we can just kind of keep going here. I think we've got the gist. Yeah, next slide, please. Great. Next slide, please. So carbon neutrality, and we can jump into the next one. So this is what we're here to really talk about today. California adopted a state goal in an executive order in 2018 for the state to achieve carbon neutrality no later than 2045. This is different than the 2030 greenhouse gas reduction goal because it is not codified yet. But importantly, this actually is the first legislative action in California that explicitly mentions carbon sequestration to achieve greenhouse gas reduction goals. So it's both reducing emission sources, but also enhancing emission sinks. So this is the IPCC's definition of global, of carbon neutrality, which is when anthropogenic or human-caused greenhouse gas emissions are balanced globally by the removals. So that's kind of the definition that we're working with. Next slide, please. And Milpitas is not alone in adopting or wanting to kind of adopt a carbon neutrality goal in a climate action plan. So next slide, please. So these are some cities throughout the Bay Area in California that have also either adopted carbon neutrality goals as resolutions or included them in their climate action plans. So several neighboring jurisdictions, and they range from 2030 all the way out to 2050. So Milpitas with the 2045 is right in line with the state right now, and just wanted to kind of tee up this conversation. So going to the next slide, please. So we have some potential greenhouse gas reduction measures for consideration. These are by no means finalized. These are being vetted by you all, by the steering committee made up of city staff. We'll be bringing a lot of these ideas to the public workshop, but we really want to get a sense for considering what carbon neutrality means, considering that the city has a lot of natural gas anticipated in the future, a lot of on-road transportation emissions, what are the kind of bold strategies, big ideas that the city thinks is feasible to adopt to really get at those specific emission sectors? And so we've come up with a few different topic areas within building energy. So we have new development, existing development, and all development. So I think we can start here with the new development. We also have the other sectors as well. And we can kind of go with, if there's not a lot to discuss, we can just keep moving through. We have a lot of ideas here. But if there's ideas that you're not seeing, we can just stay on the new development slide for a minute here. But if there aren't strategies that you're seeing that you think would be feasible, feel free to just let us know. This is not an exhaustive list, but again, really trying to think about what is really going to get at these big emission sectors to help Milpitas meet the carbon neutrality goal. So the first measure here, eliminating natural gas in all new construction by 2030. Eliminating natural gas is not new to Bay Area jurisdictions. It's been adopted several times, but would love to just get a sense from you all on whether you think this is feasible and what the barriers to adopting something like this might be.
Well, I think personally that that should be achievable, should be very feasible by 2030. And, maybe even have some intermediate goals to put into place in the next, by 2025 or 2028, something like that, just to make sure that things are moving in the right direction. And by 2030, then, we are, already teed up to meet that goal.
Yeah, great. Any other thoughts?
I tend to agree. Yeah, I would like to, we've zoned at this point to, allow for more dense, housing, and so I'm making an assumption, and I welcome, a counter to this assumption of that, this kind of goal of, shifting to away from natural gas to all electric is still, conducive to, that kind of housing model. I'm assuming it is, but I just don't know what they're up against.
And on the subject of this new construction, I remember asking Elaine, when is our next cycle for building code? And I think you mentioned it's going to be next year. Is that correct? 2022?
Yeah, it is. The building code is, adopted on a 3-year cycle. The last one was adopted with our initial foray into REACH codes to incentivize building electrification. That was adopted at the end of, gosh, time's escaping me, 2019, and went into effect in 2020, January 2020. So yes, the next adoption of the building code will start in 2022, effective in 2023.
Okay, so we will have the opportunity to kind of advocate for, all electric appliances and heating system comes the next cycle of building code refresh.
Well, the Title 24, that new cycle has already started. It takes a full 3 years. So the work on the new Title 24 standards are already happening.
And we are working with SVCE and other communities on what kind of REACH Code 2.0 would look like. So kind of in alignment with the state building code in Title 24, kind of what the next version of a REACH code might be.
Yeah, I know that the 2022 cycle is really focused on multifamily. On this cycle, they tend to have different focuses. The last one, really getting that PV installation on low-rise residential was kind of the highlight of the last code cycle, and then I think they'll focus again on commercial. So, but this, eliminating natural gas in all new construction, this could certainly be broken up by single-family, multifamily, and non-residential. They could all have different timeframes. If we think that residential is feasible now, maybe in the 2022 code cycle, the city adopts a reach code that makes that claim. And then maybe it's followed up by a multifamily a few years later, and by 2030, then it is all new construction, including non-residential. But if this seems, palatable now, could 2030 be, could we make that earlier? Could we make it 2025? What is reasonable?
I have a question on the refrigerant use. So what is the restriction now? I mean, I would have thought by now that the requirement would be to use the most environmentally friendly refrigerants in all of our appliances.
Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing issue at the state level. They're continually adopting new regulations regarding refrigerants because they are so potent in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. The state also adopts appliance regulations, and so those are also adopted on a semi-regular basis. This would be an opportunity for the city to again kind of go beyond what the state is currently requiring, which could be lower than what they're currently recommending. So there's just an option there. And one thing to note about this is that we did not include refrigerants in the city's inventory. So requiring this in new construction, while it's clearly a climate win, would not result in a quantitative benefit in terms of the city's forecasts.
Well, I'm all for, the same thing, even whether it reflects in our numbers or not, to as quickly as possible adopt the use of refrigerants that don't cause environmental harm.
And it shouldn't be, again, it's, I would like to, figure out a way to encourage, homeowners to upgrade to, heat pumps and things like this that are low GWP. So if there's a way, it's not just for new construction, it's for, upgrades too.
Well, that's a great point. And maybe we can just jump into the next slide here, which really gets at existing development and how can we get at that, because that is most of the building stock is already built, and a lot of it has natural gas, which is what we're seeing through the 2019 numbers. So some ideas are requiring point of sale electrification retrofits, or it could be, if someone is upgrading their home and they're spending a certain amount of money, or they're renovating a certain square footage, that triggers that electrification retrofit. Or it could be when the property is for sale. Those are all different mechanisms to get at when can you get the electrification retrofit completed.
Yes. Well, to say pretty much the same thing that Commissioner Lingle said, is that I think that the idea of going to an all-electric home, I think most residents or homeowners would welcome that, but it is the financial means to get there is the roadblock.
Any other thoughts on this? And yeah, we can go to kind of all development. So this would apply to both new and existing. We know with the increase in PSPS events that backup power is becoming more of a necessity at the building level. And a lot of folks get diesel backup generators. And we actually spoke with some of the city departments that issue the permits for generators, and they said they have seen an increase in the past couple of years because of the wildfires. And diesel generators are not ideal for climate reasons, for air quality reasons. So would banning them kind of outright by 2030 and incentivizing and encouraging batteries and other types of backup power sources that are fossil fuel free, is that something that is possible?
Yes, I think that would be a good way to do it, because certainly solar powered backup batteries, it's a much better way of addressing power outages than a generator that's burning fossil fuels. I do like the idea of implementing a natural gas tax, because one of the comments that we often hear is that natural gas is cheaper. It's cheaper to run a natural gas appliance than an electric appliance equivalent. And really, if you look at the damage that natural gas appliance is doing, burning fossil fuels, if you take that cost into effect, then it actually costs a whole lot more to run a natural gas appliance. So by sort of putting a natural gas tax on to really show the actual cost of running that natural gas appliance, and hopefully using that tax to offset some of the damage that is occurring, would be a good use of that tax income.
I would caution that there might be public backlash in terms of natural gas tax, just because a lot of, just looking at the inventory, we know that a lot of the energy use in Milpitas is still heavily dependent on natural gas. So if we want to make that recommendation, it should be coupled with incentives to help people retrofit. It should not be one on its own. It needs to come with funding to help people.
Yes, that's a very good point, Commissioner Kong, that it should make economic sense to move away from natural gas by getting some rebates or incentives to do that, rather than to stick with natural gas and be looking at the increased tax. So I guess it's both using both the carrot and the stick kind of method.
And this is getting debated, at the national level as well, just a carbon tax overall. Because again, it is important to somehow monetize that waste and the damage that it causes. So, but at the same time, again, France went through this 2 summers ago with the Yellow Jacket movement, and you can't go too far. You do not want to go too fast, too far. We have to be sensitive to the incomes and the limits that folks can afford. So
yes, I agree that it has to be balanced. But if what we've seen from past history is that if we look at, say, the economic impact that tobacco products has produced, then the taxes that are on tobacco products definitely don't reflect, even though we know it's a pretty high tax on tobacco products, it doesn't nearly come close to paying for the damage that tobacco products produce. And we've been, living with that cost for over, 100 years or whatever. But definitely in the last 50 years, we've seen a lot more of that.
I think the difference in the analogy is that tobacco users might be a small fraction of the society, but then right now, in terms of gas usage, I'm pretty sure in Milpitas, more than 90% of our homes right now are using gas for heating. So
And that has been traditionally because electric equivalents have not been on the scene. Now that they're coming on the scene, if we can, get over the hump and turn natural gas into a luxury kind of thing, then great. I totally agree with Commissioner Ling about how cigarettes were taxed as an optional aspect of our lives. Natural gas has not been an optional aspect, but it could be that with heat pumps and it becoming more mainstream, maybe we can actually turn natural gas heaters and water heaters into an optional thing.
Yes, it would be great to have, say, in 5 years' time, a program whereby it just makes 100% sense, both environmentally as well as economically, for homeowners or building owners to say, of course, I'm going to replace my gas furnace, my gas water heater, my gas stove. Of course, I'm going to do all that because it's cheaper in the long run and better for our health to do that. And today, there's no such program exists. So we are all sort of hemming and hawing about how to do that, how to pay for that. But if in 5 years' time, it's just so obvious that the right incentives and the right permitting, and it's just sort of like a flawless retrofit that can be done to make it easy to do that transition, then I think that people would sign up for that rather than be not wanting to go down that road because they think that it'll cost them more.
Can I jump in over here, please?
Sure thing, Commissioner Salian.
Yeah, I was just, we are talking about transition from gas to electricity, but the question is how very we can guarantee on this electricity. Now, being a resident of Milpitas, and there is about 162 houses which always have a power shortage, always. Last was only about 3 weeks ago, we had a power outage for about 4 days. Before that, again, there was a power outage. Every 3 months, we have a power outage for about 2 to 3 days. Especially for us, how can we say that, I'm going to go to the full electricity thing and get off out of the gas? In fact, I was just thinking of having my whole house going on gas, working on gas, rather than this power supply, because the power supply is not guaranteed, it's not credible, it's nothing. These people have to first make sure that there is sufficient power supply for all of us and make sure that the grids are working well. That's what I find.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Salian, and I think, and Hannah, you can jump in if I'm wrong. I think part of the resiliency plan is to include battery storage so that even when the main grid goes down, we can still have access to electricity.
Excuse me, when you say batteries, we are talking about solar. What about the regular grid over here? We cannot even get power, guaranteed power supply for a few days. Every time there is a power cut, there is a power shortage. Every time you have the same issues going on over here. Especially when you call them up, they say it is 160 houses. I do not know how they get this figure, but it is 160 houses, especially in my neighborhood. It is all the problem with power.
Yep. So Commissioner Saline, I know we are aware there's a local issue with the PG&E reliability and the infrastructure. And I know the city's working with PG&E on that in that localized area. And clearly there's a lot of issues and still to be worked out around something like a natural gas tax. I think, from what I'm hearing, there definitely is reason to consider it. I don't think it's something we're going to look at doing next year, but we are talking about a long-term climate action plan, and maybe considering, part of the actions for that would be studying it and figuring out when the time is right. But not, committing to doing something in the next year. I think with that, I do want to do a time check and keep us moving forward in this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is all really helpful feedback, so appreciate everyone's contributions. Well, maybe just to wrap up, because we don't want to keep everybody too long, we can just cover transportation as well, being the largest sector of emissions in the city. So here we've organized two categories, VMT reduction here, and then the next slide, which we don't need to get to quite yet, but will be about supporting electric vehicle adoption. So the first measure here is really kind of what MTC was originally getting at when they started their Plan Bay Area 2050 process of thinking about transportation demand management strategies and requiring employers of a certain size to limit car commutes. So again, the number here of 50 or more employees, these are all just ideas. So that does not have to be the threshold. 40% does not necessarily have to be the threshold, but these are just kind of conversation starters of, is this something that we could see happening in the city of Milpitas, especially now with the pandemic and folks being maybe a little bit more flexible about working from home and employers being more flexible. Is this something that could continue in the future? Some other ideas about requiring parking maximums at new developments so that we're not relying on cars so heavily in the future, especially with the specific plans that are coming out that are going to really be directing development over the next several decades. And then kind of going off of that idea of creating vehicle-free downtown areas, maybe within specific planning areas. So I'll just kind of throw those three ideas out there and feel free to just chime in as you have ideas.
Well, can you elaborate a little bit more about the parking maximums? I didn't follow that, sorry.
Sure, so typically for new development, there's parking ordinances that the city has that require X many spots for this type of development. And so rather than requiring a minimum number of spaces that need to be constructed for specific developments, you put a maximum on it. So it's kind of flipping it on its head and saying, we're not going to allow more than this many spaces for this type of development. I mean, obviously there's, ADA requirements and things like that, but generally, it's not guaranteed that every new residential unit is going to have 2 parking spaces. Maybe we're going to say they can only have 1. And so we're just trying to, incentivize behavior change a little bit more.
Yeah.
So my input here is that these are good ideas, but they can't happen unless our transit system has a huge improvement from where it is today.
And do you mean transit within the entire Bay Area, within just the city?
Yes, within the entire Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah. The other, I don't know if this is already on your list, but the first one talks about, okay, encouraging, folks to work from home. But by doing a requirement, I don't know about requirements. I don't know how those work. Instead, we ought to think about it as incentivizing, and incentivizing the companies and incentivizing the folks who have to work from home. I've said this before. I mean, I live near a park, and I would love to go up there and have a food truck there and have lunch. I guess I don't quite understand why there are no food trucks there, but it would be a great thing to do, is to build neighborhoods with parks and make parks mandatory, so that folks can comfortably, and parks and local, stores as well, so that you don't have to do so much commuting to get around. And you can actually, build, these tighter communities around your parks. So it's a little different, take on, getting folks to work from home. It just let's, if we can incentivize them, then that'd be, even better. Just a thought.
No, that's great. Okay, well, maybe we can just move on to the EV support measures here. So again, just some ideas requiring EV chargers to be installed at a certain percentage of parking spaces, or requiring a certain amount of parking spaces to be electric vehicle ready. So that doesn't mean the charger is there, but it means maybe the conduit and all the other associated infrastructure is there, so that when the time comes and there's enough EVs on the road, that it's a little bit more kind of plug and go. And then the last idea, which just came out of the North Bay, I believe Petaluma just adopted this, was banning the development of new gas stations, which again, just kind of thinking about behavior change, market change, things like that. How can the city push folks to adopt greater amounts of electric vehicles? So thoughts on any of these ideas?
Well, I see the need for more EV chargers, and to make it easy for folks to recharge their EVs. The ban for development of new gas stations, I would think that the market would take care of that itself, in terms of folks or companies wanting to invest in building a new gas station. I would think that when they do their business plan, they would see that the lack of cars needing a gas station would mean that it doesn't make financial sense to build a new gas station. But I've heard of gas stations being changed into EV recharge locations, with the real, we know of the supercharging stations, but I think there is a new standard that will even charge cars faster than that, where you can get, a 200 or 300 mile fill up, if you want to call it that, in 30 minutes. And so, these gas stations could become the new, recharging stations where, just a 5 or 10 minute recharge would be enough for an electric vehicle to be on its way. And that's, just enough time for someone to, buy a cup of coffee and use the restroom and then be off again.
In fact, there's a company out there who is really pushing the concept of swapping batteries, and that is a 5-minute swap. So I don't know how that'll work, though. Having my own batteries, I kind of want to hang on to them. But it's out there. Maybe it could be that the gas stations might take care of themselves by emphasizing the two bullets above. yeah, and really pushing on recharging in those parking spots. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Can I jump in? I think it is a good idea of talking about shutting down the gas. I mean, not putting up any more gas stations, but at the same time, we should see the price of this, these electric cars, because I'm in the market of buying one, and I was looking at those Tesla cars, those S models, about 75,000. Now, why am I spend 7,000 for that car? I might as well buy a Jaguar with V8 engine in it.
Yes, but they're $20,000 electric vehicles also.
Oh,
That's right.
okay, that is a basic.
Great one. I have a video coming up on my working with my Chevy Bolt, and that is a reasonably priced electric, and it's a fantastic little car. So
yes, I think it'll be posted on the Milpitas Sustainability YouTube channel on Friday, I believe, in 2 days' time.
Yes, that's right. It'll go live on Friday.
Thank you, Johnny.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, but we should try to see the prices of these cars go down, and so the people automatically go and get these cars.
Yep. And that's the thing, again, that's another trend that seems to be coming is, more mainstream EV, cars. So, GM is all over it, Volvo is all over it, VW seems to be. So, there is a wave of, hopefully they better be affordable cars coming, but it is the chargers that are going to be a challenge. We got to anticipate that and keep up with it. I wouldn't want competition for a charger to get in to be of a concern of an electric car owner. We need to make that take that one concern off the table with more chargers.
And Commissioner Sally, and I'll send you a link to the Silicon Valley Clean Energy EV Assistant. It'll let you compare different electric vehicles and their costs. And that's a tool that's available to help you shop around.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about, some nice cars like Tesla Model S or something like that, I mean, but if you tell me, go for Prius and I could say that's not my choice.
Well, I think that there are
Correct.
some $30,000 and $40,000 choices too.
Yeah, I think we are beyond the agenda item now. So let's move on. Hannah, can you keep us going?
Sure. Yeah. We can go ahead a couple more slides to our next step slide. Yeah. So again, thank you all for all of your thoughts tonight. This has been incredibly helpful, and the conversation certainly does not end now. We do have our dashboard that's live. We'll be adding some surveys to that shortly, and we'll be hosting our community workshop on the evening of May 6th. So we would love to see you all there. But we will be back to present to you all again several more times over the course of this project. And please reach out if you have any questions. But thank you so much for your time this evening. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you for the report, Hannah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I did take a look at the website, the CAP website. So that was very helpful. Appreciate it. And I have signed up for the May 6th workshop.
Excellent.
And I encourage everyone to sign up for the workshop so that we can have some additional sort of detailed discussions and input to the CAP. All right. Is there anything else that we need to take action on at this point, Elaine?
No, there is not. we can move
Okay.
on in the agenda.
Then,
Hannah, Honey, and Sam, thank you so much.
yes, thank you for attending.
Have a
Thank
good
you all
night.
so much. Have a good night.
Let's move on to item number 10, city liaison reports. So Councilmember Chua.
Thank you, Chair. Well, great discussion tonight. I wrote a lot of notes and I have like full notes on my notebook. So watch out, Elaine, you gotta have a lot of to-do list.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm just gonna make it brief and because in respect of time, the council approved the general plan. And what is the general plan? Does anybody know?
I did start reading it, haven't finished it. It's many pages, like 200 pages.
Okay, we'll make it brief. It's a roadmap on how we develop our city. The last general plan was in 20 plus years ago. So it's time for an upgrade. So we did that, and it's really exciting because not all council members can be part of this general plan because it really tells you how to develop our city in terms of industrial, commercial, residential, innovation area, parks, everything. It's a roadmap. It's how we want to develop our city, and it's also addressing all the seven objectives of our city. So that's basically it. So it's been approved. So we have a new general plan. Also, the council is finalizing. We now have, I don't know if you know, that we now have an accessory dwelling unit Mondays, where you can go and sign up, well, for half an hour. The staff can answer any questions, anything related to ADUs. So that is great. That is awesome. I heard it's fully booked. So go in there and please sign up. And we're also looking into a safe ADU legalization program. So any unpermitted ADUs in the city, we will work with them and try to legalize or get it permitted. So that's a good one as well. And the other commission that I'm a liaison with is the Community Advisory Commission, and they're in the process of, one of their charters is to, we get federal grants, and it's called CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, and they make recommendations to the council. These federal grants are for low-income family, and we give them out to nonprofit organization that deals with anything related to low-income individuals and families, rent relief, legal help, temporary housing, all that. So I think we have right now with the COVID, we have 1.2 million allocated. So the charter of the CAC is to divvy that up and make a recommendation to the city council. Oh, one thing that I'm excited about is Beautify Milpitas, and I thought of you guys, to do some cleanup, and we were gonna do it tomorrow, Earth Day, but forget it, it's pandemic. So hopefully in a couple of months we get this commission involved as well. So that's it. And thank you, and great discussion. I love it. And thank you all for welcome to Commissioner Admana and to Deputy City Manager Walter Rossman. Thank you for being here. Thank you in advance for your service, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chua. That's great to hear your reports from all of the other groups that you work with. And thanks for your contribution there, as well as to keep us informed of what's going on with other parts of the city. So really interesting work that you're doing there. Are there any other reports at this time?
I can give a quick update on Earth Day and some other activities. You know, we actually did more of an Earth Month. There's been stuff happening all month long. The council did adopt a proclamation officially declaring Earth Day in Milpitas as April 22nd. We've had lots of different events, including a social media challenge, encouraging folks to post pictures. We did also have a gardening with succulents and water conservation class last Friday. We had over 70 participants there on that Zoom class. Linda actually had to hop off because we had another edible gardening and water efficient gardening class tonight. We had about 80 people registered for that class. So that's exciting. We have 2 presentations tomorrow related to Earth Day that are on Zoom and virtual. We have one called the Eco Heroes Show, which is designed for our younger residents. And we've been reaching out to local preschools and schools, encouraging them to participate. I think it's from 2 to 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, right before or right after nap time. And then we also have a presentation tomorrow evening with Bill. I just now forgot his last name. He's a climate reality trained speaker. So he'll be giving a presentation as well as a demo of a simulation program called En-ROADS, where you can actually simulate different GHG scenarios for yourself. We do also have a litter kit pickup, drive-through litter kit pickup event at our public works yard tomorrow on Friday afternoon. We've been publicizing that and encouraging residents to come pick up a litter kit so they can start picking up litter around their neighborhoods, as well as part of National River Cleanup Month next month. We have over, gosh, 116 or more RSVPs for litter kits. So those are, that's going to be a great turnout. And then we have a compost giveaway event Saturday morning. And then you've already heard about the Climate Action Plan Update Workshop on May 6th. And then as part of National River Cleanup Day, we are encouraging residents to pick up litter in and around their neighborhoods every Saturday in May and prevent that litter from making its way into our local creeks and waterways. So that's a lot going on, and I'm excited by the turnout and everything that we're seeing happening here in Milpitas for Earth Day and just on an ongoing basis. The last just update is related to our coordination with Vmt on the odor study. We have been meeting with them in the last few weeks while we've continued our staff-led community odor monitoring program. Vmt is also working with their consultants on their odor attribution study. They are looking at having both their consultants here in May to sample odor and take readings at the source facilities as well as out in the community. So they'll be here, I think the second 2 weeks of May. You may see a white van labeled with Montrose Consulting on it. That is actually a really high-tech van that will be collecting odor samples and analyzing the constituents in the air. And that's part of their effort to start to fingerprint where the odors might be coming from. So stay tuned. There is a lot going on. And again, thank you for the excellent and insightful conversation tonight that will help inform where we go with the Climate Action Plan update.
Thanks very much, Elaine. Great information. I'm really excited to hear about the fact that Vmt will be doing air sampling. So maybe I'll see that white van in the neighborhood. We'll see. And I look forward to I'm so glad that so many residents have responded for the litter pickup kits. That's great. And I look forward to the month of May, the Saturdays in May, that we'll be doing the, on your own litter pickup activities. So that's great. Let's see. And
Chair, Councilmember Chua wanted to say something.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Chua.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge Johnny. I don't know, you're one of the staff.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Chua. Yes, Johnny Mahennet is actually a Civic Spark Fellow that's been working with me in the Department of Public Works. He's a sustainability fellow. He's been focused on supporting the Climate Action Plan as well as our energy and water savings project. So yeah, Johnny's been here virtually since September.
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
Thank you,
okay.
Elaine, and thank you, council member, for the acknowledgement
Yes.
and introduction.
Okay. I'm giving you the responsibility to make sure I'm informed of all these activities because I just first heard the little kits and I'm so excited about it. I want one. I want to go over there and publicize this if you can give me direction and anything else that is, if you know me, I really tend to communicate a lot of what our commissions are doing. I do that a lot and I want to know what's going on so I can communicate to everybody. I usually do a announcement in the city council and I want to do one for a lot for this group. So
Okay.
please email me, text me on how I can get the little kits. Thank you. Welcome, Johnny.
Thank you,
Chair.
Councilmember Chua. That's great. And my contribution that Johnny also helped me with, I made a short video, about a 2-minute video on vermicomposting. I showed my basically my worm bin or my worm box on a short video, and Johnny was nice enough to upload that to the YouTube channel also. And if you are interested, after you see that short video, on May 1st, I will be doing a virtual presentation on vermicomposting for the city of Milpitas. But of course, because it's virtual, people from all over can, anywhere can join. And we'll be digging into the details of vermicomposting in that particular workshop, which is a little bit more focused than the regular composting workshop. Talks about, doing backyard composting, as well as a little bit about vermicomposting, but the May 1st workshop will only be on vermicomposting. That's it.
I just want to say hi to Tony as well. Hi, Tony. I didn't forget you.
Yes.
I would hope you didn't, Councilman. Sure. Thank you.
I have a long list, so watch out.
For those who haven't seen it, I did leave
Chair.
the link to the YouTube channel that's live in the chat, and we'll be debuting a 4th playlist on home and vehicle electrification this Friday.
Okay,
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. And so I think that takes us to the end of our agenda. And Elaine, I believe you told me that it's okay to instead of doing a roll call, vote. We don't need to vote on adjournment. I can basically say that since we've completed today's agenda and there are no other additional items to cover, sorry. Commissioner Lingle, you're on mute.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I am?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let's see, real quick. We did not meet last month. And in last month's agenda, there was a mention of, the vulnerability assessment summary.
Yes, we'll be doing that. We'll be doing that in May instead. So we've shifted the schedule, so you didn't miss out. We've rescheduled that for the May commission meeting.
Okay, that'll do it then. All right,
we'll look forward to getting to that next month then. Wonderful. Okay, so seeing that there are no other questions or announcements or agenda items, I call the adjournment of this meeting, and thank you so much for participating this evening. And I look forward to seeing you off and on various virtual meetings over the next month, but definitely in 1 month's time when this commission meets again. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Here at the
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.